Science All Stat. Just to my right here is the one and only Michael Fabricant. Thank you very much. Michael, how are you?
I'm very well. An exciting day today.
An exciting day. Right, OK. Now, we've been presented here, ladies and gentlemen, at GB News with something that's been doing the rounds in the House of Commons amongst Conservative MPs, which is a checklist, really, of why to back Boris. It includes things on, getting on with the job, cost of living crisis, he got Brexit done, we would look weak or we would look divided at a time of elections, Vladimir Putin, war in Europe, etc. Do you think any of this is going to wash with the Conservative MPs?
Well, I tweeted that out. I mean, I think Conservative MPs are pretty sort of sophisticated people. I mean, in the sense that they're politicians and they get elected. So I don't think that's going to wash with them. I mean, simply because they know it already. He got the big calls right. But the interesting thing is the fact that we're having this vote of no confidence today. It was obviously planned, the numbers that would go in, because the people who want to see him gone had been talking about this over the last 24 hours and saying that a vote was imminent. So clearly it wasn't, as if you like, a sort of spontaneous thing done by individuals. It was planned that it would go in this weekend and be announced this morning.
Yeah, can I just say, sorry, can I just ask one thing? Is there, the timing of it, I think, is what's important here. It's quite key, actually, because it comes before these by-election results, which are not predicted to go necessarily particularly well. It becomes before potentially a Keir Starmer fine for Beergate, whatever you want to call it. Actually, the timing of this could be very good for Boris Johnson. It's almost like maybe some of his allies might have sent a few letters in early.
Yeah, well, I remember I was a member of the ERG, because although I'm not particularly right-wing,
European Reform Group, that
exactly, yeah. And the one thing that I've always believed in is that we'd be better off out of Europe. And that's why I was a member of the ERG, this group, which people characterise as being right-wing, but it isn't a right-wing group. But I remember Jacob Rees-Mogg announcing that there would be a vote of no confidence against Theresa May. And he said at the meeting, and we're going to go outside and the cameras are ready for us, so everybody who supports us, join us. And I remember people looking at their fingernails and not catching his eye at all, because the timing was wrong. And I think for those people who want to see Boris gone, they've got the timing wrong, actually. And, we'll see. We'll know by about 9 o'clock. So
you say they've got the timing wrong. So is there a suitable time for those who do want him gone to trigger a leadership election there?
Well, maybe after the by-elections. I mean, as one of your commentators, or you were commenting, they're not expected to go well. Look, we're mid-term.
Yeah.
I mean, apart from anything else. But, I think a lot of all this rather coordinated attack against Boris is not actually about Partygate. And Jesse Norman, who is a colleague of mine and whom I greatly respect, incidentally, he gave his reasons, and it was reasons which don't concur with my own. He's against the selling off of Channel 4, which most people think Channel 4 is a private company anyway.
Really
it was against the fact that we're, announcing a Rwanda policy to try and stop this illegal immigration across the channel.
Can I just draw your attention to the third paragraph in this briefing that MPs have received, which says we can choose today to focus on growing the economy, cutting taxes, making our streets safer, busting NHS backlogs. He also mentions about the vaccine rollout as one of the big issues that they're asking people to focus on when they support Boris Johnson. Cutting taxes is not happening, is it? The NHS backlog, yes, it's gone down slightly, but it's still rising. When we think about vaccine rollout, I personally think about Nadhim Zahawi, who, of course, was vaccines minister. And in any case, it's Rishi Sunak who's associated with the everything that was done to help the economy in the pandemic. So what exactly can people attribute specifically to Boris Johnson that might help them make that vote for him?
Well, it was very clear because, you had not only Keir Starmer, but others in the government saying, let's do the safe thing and go with the European vaccines programme. It was Boris Johnson. This is long before Nadhim Zahawi. It was Boris Johnson who said, no, we can do it on our own and we'll do it better. Let's take advantage of Brexit. And that's why I support him, because he gets the big calls right in Cabinet. And all this saying, oh, well, it was this person or that person and whatever, actually is not the case. The direction comes directly from Boris because he's ebullient, because he's bold, because he's an optimist. And part of the problem with his optimism, if you like, was the result of the sort of rather relaxed atmosphere that happened in in Downing Street when we weren't making
I think
those
too much
decisions.
is being made of the role that Partygate has played in this. OK, maybe it has played a relatively significant role or a significant role, but I think there's other things as well. There are issues with things like net zero, there are issues with taxes, but fundamentally it comes down to whether or not Conservative MPs feel that if Boris Johnson leaves that party into the next general election, that they will keep their seat. And is it a case of maybe be careful what you wish for with a lot of Conservative MPs? Because Boris Johnson, by and large, does tend to win things.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. Look, let's be clear. If there were a general election tomorrow, we'd lose.
Right.
And we'd lose big time. And we'd lose big time.
So there you go.
But, you know, by law, there needn't be a general election until early 2005. My guess, for what it's worth, is that we'll have an election either in May or September of 2004. There's a lot of water to flow on.
2004?
2024.
Okay.
Thank you, Mercy.
Gosh, taking me back.
Having a senior moment
Back to
there.
secondary school.
Yeah.
And, but it could be as late as 2025.
Yeah.
Did I say 2005 as well?
No, you're all right. Don't worry.
Oh, good, thank goodness.
We'll let you get away with it.
Time for my tablets.
Now, look, we're going to keep you in here, Michael, actually, because I think you're a tremendous asset for us to have in the studio throughout the course of this day. What is a moment?
Oh, that's Graham Brady there, chair of the 1922 Backbench Committee. You know, what did you make of his remarks this morning?
Well, one of the things about Graham is he's an absolute professional when it comes to this. He's done this many, many times. He's always kept it a secret, the number of people who've written to him about this matter. And the one thing I have no doubt of whatsoever is the counts will be done accurately and he'll report it without fear or favour.
And he's the right man for the job. Now, we're just going
Are joined by Conservative MP for Lichfield, Michael Fabricant, who's been with us since the show started. You know, just tell us what you made there of Therese Coffey's comments. We just spoke to the Work and Pension Secretary. You know, she thinks Boris Johnson is getting the cost of living right, and she thinks that that's something that MPs are going to be focusing on when they're voting for him.
Yeah, well, just think how Boris Johnson must feel. He gets elected as Prime Minister and thinks he's got one massive call to make, which is to get Brexit done. He gets Brexit done, then faces the COVID crisis, which you've never had in 100 years since the Spanish flu in the First World War. And then we have a war in Europe. So it's been one thing piled after another. But as I said earlier on, the point is that Boris has got the big calls right.
Okay.
So I very much agree with Therese.
OK, well, that's the line at the minute from the Boris backers, which is, of course, that he's got the
my line.
calls right. It's your line,
I don't know about
absolutely.
Boris backers.
It's your line. But what do you make of Andrew's comments there?
Well, it was interesting indeed. And of course, he talked about Partygate. And, you know, one of the things that I cannot bear is injustice. And let me give you an example. When the acting commissioner of the Metropolitan Police was being interviewed, I think it was the Justice Committee, and he's Sir Stephen House. He said there isn't any clear evidence at all. I'm actually reading a thing. This is not a BBC. Sorry, this is not a central office brief, a Conservative brief. It's actually from the BBC website. He said there's no clear evidence that Boris Johnson had consistently breached any COVID-19 rules. It was just that one event. And, you know, I hate this injustice that when things happened on the Friday, when Boris was long gone out of number 10 Downing Street, either at Chequers 45 miles away or on a trip thousands of miles away, you know, on government business, these things were going on without his knowledge. Now, you can say, well, OK, he should have had tougher controls in place. But, you know, I say that the civil service let him down. The civil service advised him that even that one event wasn't breaching any rules. It's the civil service people who said, you know what, come along, bring your own booze and all the rest of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think he is, by definition, as the leader of the country, in fact, he is responsible to some extent. He has to take accountability, and he says he has taken accountability for that. But I don't think you can solely blame civil servants for what is clearly a culture that has come from the top.
Well, you know what? You're right. I mean, in the sense that, can't remember, was it President Truman had a sign on his desk which said, the buck stops here. But at the same time, you can't be responsible for things you don't know about. And I do think the civil service let him down badly. And I said to Boris, so, what are we going to do to stop this from ever happening again? And he's already put in place. And in fact, I remember revealing it on GB News 2 weeks ahead of the announcement. Scoop for Tom Harwood's show, actually.
Oh, thank you.
But, sorry about that, Patrick. He just happened to be interviewing me at the time. But, where he's put into place that there would be an office of Prime Minister. In other words, the senior civil servants, the really senior ones, would be based at number 10, because most of them were not based there in Whitehall.
Good stuff, Michael. Thank you so much, and really appreciate having you in the studio for this as well. It's a tremendous asset for us. Right. I'll lob it back over now to Michael Fabricant, who's Conservative MP for Lichfield, who's we're very grateful, actually. He's been joining us in the studio and will continue to join us in the studio throughout the show. We interviewed Andrew Bridgen earlier, who made a series of points as to why he was dead against Boris Johnson continuing. And one of those was about him, as he said, misleading Parliament, lying to Parliament. I know that you want to say something about that.
Well, only that there's an investigation going on. Did he lie to Parliament? And the test is not whether, in effect, he knew, he actually said something that was factually wrong. It was, did he at the time believe it to be wrong? And as I said earlier on this show, he had taken advice from the civil servants that because it was a workplace, it was within the rules. Now, he also said, rule makers can't be rule breakers, which is a fair point to make. But prime ministers and secretaries of state don't draft the laws. The laws are actually very, very detailed. I mean, I think, if you like, the big mistake was having laws in the first place. Actually, that's a wider thing. But if you remember, the mainstream media were all saying, oh, we want guidance, we want guidance. The point is, I think the argument that Boris will be making to the committee is that he had been advised that he was not breaking any rules, so he was not misleading Parliament. But that's a good point that he makes, but that we won't know about that for several months.
And so do you think that that is what's on his mind at the moment, defending himself in the face of Partygate? Will that be what he's thinking MPs who have put in these letters are focusing on? Actually, will it be things like the cost of living? And these are the big issues that he wants people to focus on.
Well, that's what he would like people to focus on, and that's what we should be focusing on, because that's what's affecting everybody's lives. Now, at the moment, I know in Lichfield, people are very angry. They do see Boris as a liar and they feel they can't trust him. But I want the truth to get out there. He was not lying at the time. The police have said that he was not a serial breaker of the rules anyway. And indeed, I love that marvellous phrase that one of my colleagues came up with. He was ambushed with a cake in a cabinet meeting, on his birthday.
Are you concerned, because I suspect this is what a lot of Conservative MPs are concerned about now, is that the lack of public trust, perceived lack of public trust in Boris Johnson is going to stick them at the next general election. You said some of your own constituents, a lot of your own constituents, are unhappy with him. Is that going to affect you at the ballot box?
Well, it would if there were a general election tomorrow. But you know what? There won't be a general election tomorrow. There is a lot of water going to flow under the bridge. And by gosh, think of all the water that's flown under the bridge since Boris was elected. We've had a COVID pandemic. We've got out of the EU, and now a war in Ukraine. Goodness knows what's going to face us next.
Michael Fabricant, great to have you on the show. John Penrose, hardly a household name in his own home, but he has resigned.
Yes, and I think we'll see more of this as we lead up to the vote at 6 o'clock. I think this is all very coordinated. As I said earlier on, it was being released, if you like, yesterday, that the names would be sufficient to trigger a no confidence vote or a confidence vote. Quite clearly, there is a system behind all of this. I think more people will announce them. And, these are not people who are well known. These are people often who have been, shall we not say sacked, but moved on. As ministers, and so have got grudges. Anti-corruption czar is important, but it's not paid. And, all right. I mean, but John Penrose, I have to say, at the end of the day, is not keen on things like our policy to try and stop illegal migration. He is very keen on some of the more left-leaning issues, and I respect him for that. But this will, as I say, be all part of a plan today to try and get momentum.
And just before we take a short break, is there somebody who you think could publicly come out and say, I will vote against the Prime Minister, perhaps a popular MP, who will make people who might be considering voting for the Prime Minister think again?
No, I mean, the interesting thing is, I don't think it matters whether they're popular, unpopular, or even not heard of. I think most MPs have made up their mind, to be honest. There may be a few who are wavering, but whether or not anyone is going to say, oh, well, John Penrose has quit, it's going to make a huge difference to me, I don't think so.
No, not me either. I had to double check how you spelled his surname. Anyway, Michael, thank you very much. Michael Fabricant will be with us throughout the show, but before that, Michael Fabricant joins us here. Michael, yes, this Jeremy Hunt tweet. Just very quickly, Michael, this Jeremy Hunt tweet, he's come out against him, hasn't he? You know, you initially backed Hunt in the initial...
Yes, I did, and I actually thought he could become a great Prime Minister, but you know what? He wouldn't give a clear exit date for Brexit. He was going to go down the same line as Theresa May, and I had to abandon him. And, you know, Jeremy Hunt's resignation is no great surprise, or his tweet. Mercy was just saying to me that 2 years ago we were going through a leadership election, and you know what? It's Groundhog Day.
It is Groundhog Day, Michael. Right, stay with us, Stephen, because I'm going to bring in Michael Fabricant's been with us all day. Thank you very much. A marathon
Got
stint
my old
here.
friend Mickey.
Yes, well, it might be. I don't know. You'll have to find something on for yourself. But Michael, thank you very much. Just respond to what Stephen said there.
Well, Stephen's talking about Jeremy Hunt, and of course, Jeremy Hunt has come out. He's come out with his tweet, and he's saying that having been trusted with power, Conservative MPs know in their hearts we're not giving the British people the leadership they deserve. So he is the stalking horse, and I think Jeremy will regret it, to be honest with you.
OK, well, but with the idea there that Stephen was talking about as well, that Boris Johnson's this wounded animal, this
wildebeest, away from the...
You know, have you got a point in that?
I don't buy that, actually, because, you know, this is very different from the situation with Theresa May. She won a vote of no confidence, but then, of course, she resigned. But why did she resign? It was because she was talking about doing a deal with Labour to have a second referendum on the EU. And we decided enough was enough. And now we've got the Labour Party saying quite clearly, you know, between the lines, that they want to rejoin the single market. We heard that really from Tanjit earlier on. And that would mean, again, being governed from Brussels. And there needs to be a clear choice. But the key thing, I think, this is not about Partygate. This is all about those who were Remainers, or those who believe that the political policy of Boris Johnson is not what they like, and so that is why they are opposing him. But Stephen was right about one thing, and that is we are far too keen to get rid of our leaders, and we're ruthless. And the only reason why Labour, and I'm looking now at Stephen, the reason why Labour don't get rid of their leaders, you don't really have much of a mechanism to do that. Otherwise, I know you'd be knifing them all in the back, because I think you were in the whip's office, your whip's office, when I was a government whip.
Oh, yes. I regretted it to this day.
Go on, so,
we were supposed to hate each other.
We got on extremely well, actually. This was the worrying thing. I think both our chief whips were extremely suspicious over the fact that often you and I would be seen in a huddle discussing tactics because we had to get the business through.
Too much information, Michael. Too much information.
Gosh, all right.
But Patrick, can I just say one thing? As soon as the announcement was made this morning, the FTSE jumped 107 points. The FTSE is now up in the high 76s. Now, I have to say, you know, when you talk about football matches, don't talk about emotion. You talk about who the bookies are backing. The City is backing anybody but Boris at the present time. The FTSE is leaping. We're firming up against the dollar. The economic signs are actually very, very strong, and they're pointing in one direction, and that is Boris must go.
I think what the FTSE are very happy about is that it'll be resolved. And that's what I'm very pleased about. I'm pleased it's happening sooner rather than later, because it's important that we get this you know, rather niggling cancer, if you like, in the Conservative Party over and done with. And I hope by tomorrow we'll know where we are.
I tell you what, lads, never knowingly undersold you two. Fantastic stuff there. Stephen Pound there as well. Great stuff, Stephen, as always. And we appreciate the GB News mug. Yes. A little bit of branding never goes amiss. Stephen Pound there, of course. Yes, good stuff. Right, we're going to go to views for the final little bit of this show.
We are. Lots of passion this morning in the inbox. Many of you saying this is an absolute Remainer coup, and which has been echoed by lots of people we've spoken to today. George, however, says Boris Johnson is a serial liar who has lied to Parliament. The people didn't vote for a liar, and Her Majesty the Queen certainly doesn't need one as Prime Minister.
Well, that's representing the other side of the coin, because I think it is fair to say, Mercy, that the vast majority of people who've been emailing into us anyway so far are quite pro-Boris, aren't they?
Yeah, I think that's true. Alan says, when are we going to bring up the fact that 80% of the British people will never be able to afford green vehicles? We shouldn't, because we spoke to Tan Desi, who's a Labour MP and shadowed Railways Minister,
yes.
and he was talking about, well, Labour would come in and we would do lots of green things and green agenda. Lots of people then emailed in saying, we don't want this green agenda, we won't be able to afford it, that's not what we want to hear. So, you know, people weren't very impressed by his vouching for Labour. No,
absolutely. Yeah, Michael, look, there's no doubt, though, just to wrap it up with you, just to say a massive thank you for sitting here for the 2 hours that this show's been on air and dipping in and out. It's been fantastic stuff. But there's no doubt that whatever happens tonight, Boris Johnson does have somewhere to go to restore the trust amongst many voters, doesn't he? He does.
He does, but what he's got to do is he's already putting in place a much firmer leadership at number 10, and by that I mean the civil service. I have no doubt that he will make changes to his ministerial team, and it'll be interesting to see what happens there. And I'm not bidding for any position, I have to say. I rather enjoy doing this GB News stuff, and
we enjoy it too.
But there's no question that I think that Boris will be a vote winner. I mean, I know he's not popular at the moment, but the point is the Metropolitan Police have said that he wasn't a serial breaker. Nobody, apart from John Penrose, is saying he's broken the Nolan rules, and most people haven't got a clue what the Nolan rules are anyway.
Yeah, he did still receive that fixed penalty notice, though, of course.
Well, let's see.
Forget that.
Let's see what happens to Keir Starmer, who incidentally turned out to be a real hypocrite.
Indeed.
Because Keir Starmer said when he was being investigated, Boris was being investigated, he should resign. Yeah. Now Keir Starmer's being investigated. He's not offering to resign now.
Yeah, indeed. And if Boris Johnson, which is, you know, there's a likelihood of this happening, he is still Prime Minister, effectively, by the end of the day. Do you think he would be wise to call a perhaps early general election, or should he wait it out as long as possible?
Well, if I were he, I would choose the best moment, as all Prime Ministers do. Clearly now is not the best moment. I don't actually know where this story has come from. Maybe it's come from the government whips trying to frighten people. I don't know, but it won't fool anybody. There won't be a general election till at least next year, and probably not 2024.
Very lastly, Michael, I'm asking you to get your crystal ball out and predict the future. Give me some numbers for the vote for this evening, in your opinion, right
now. I was hoping you wouldn't do that.
Come on.
I reckon, but then I'm always wrong, so take this with the biggest pinch of salt ever, that 2/3 of the party at least will be voting for Boris. Certainly I shall.
Well, there we go. Look,
well, he won by 2/3 against Jeremy Hunt, didn't he? So that might be his lucky number.
His lucky number, absolutely. Look, Michael, thank you so much. Absolute legend.